Hi, yeah, I'm presenting today a way to look at and fix up an old guitar which has been played and loved for years and needs a little bit of get up and go to get going again. And it's usually a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now, this particular guitar here is an old 1970s Gibson Lawsuit era guitar. It's called a Mann guitar, and it's got the old Mann, which is a Gibson type headstock. It's an Ibanez 684, or the Mann number is A303D. It's a very nice guitar, very well made. The interesting part is that the top actually has a laminate top, and it still has very good tone to it, but it also makes it last the test of time, even with the really lovely tone. The reason for the good tone in this guitar is that they've used a very good laminate in between the two spruce laminates. It's a mahogany laminate. You can see it because there's quite a bit of wear from people playing the guitar fairly hard, and it's worn away around the sound hole, so it's very easy to see the laminate. And when I picked it up, I just said I had to have this guitar because it just sounded so nice, even though it only had 20-year-old strings on it. So the first thing, of course, I did when I got the guitar was I gave it a new set of strings. Now, of course, even though they had lawsuit era guitars, Gibson seems to be a very good set of strings. I mean, these strings are just as good. I prefer these on some guitars and the Gibson on others, but make sure you get a light brand. Like, it should have an 11 on there. That means the first string is an 11 gauge string, and that means it's not going to pull too much on the neck when they're on there. Now, when I was putting these strings on the guitar, the one thing I found was the second string was buzzing quite a bit as I was tuning it up. And the reason for that was at the nut side here, the nut was just slightly widened just from wear, and the first fret had been worn down in a groove slightly on the one side more than the other. So what I ended up doing is I got a slightly higher gauge string, an 18. This is a wound string, and what that did to the guitar is it took the buzz out of the second string. You'll see in this diagram where there was buzz on the second string because it was too far towards the first string, but by putting a slightly heavier gauge on, it centered it more in the nut groove, and the buzz went away. I did find, though, as I was tuning up the strings, that if it was played quite hard, there was a bit of buzz in some of the other strings, especially the fourth string. Now, to fix that, there was a suggestion on the internet to use, and this sounds crazy, but it works, you use some baking soda. Oh, if you're French, baking soda, and some crazy glue. And this is the gel type crazy glue. And all you do with that is you use one of these guys here. You cut a little piece off the end of it with a knife, and then you put a little bit of crazy glue right in this is while you have the strings off, of course. You put a little bit of crazy glue just in between, and then you take the little piece you've cut off, and you just use it to just sprinkle a very little bit of baking soda in there, and that will raise the strings ever so slightly so that it takes away the buzz. Now, this is a temporary thing. You want to make sure your guitar is going to work, and then once it works and you really think it's worth it, then you take it in and get it fixed up by a luthier who knows how to properly replace the frets on your string, on your guitar. Now, when you are pulling out, just for those who are new to guitars, when you're pulling out your little pegs here, I always use a pick, hold it up to the guitar right underneath, and then pop the peg out, and that way you don't get any marks on the wood of your guitar, on the bridge. Now, the one thing that with this guitar also is this bridge, the strings have been so worn in that they had quite a slot going in the rosewood. Now, you can take these tongue depressors or whatever you can get hold of. Make sure it's a maple or some very hard wood, and you cut a very thin sliver, and you fit it to the slot that's been developing in there, and you fill it in with that. Now, I didn't use any glue. You don't really need glue in the slot, because the string will hold that piece of wood in the slot, but it makes it a lot easier every time you're changing strings to pull the strings out. And if you're doing any sort of adjustments inside your guitar, outside your guitar, you're always popping these pegs out, and you just don't want to have to pull them out of the wood. So that's why you just stick a little piece of maple or whatever, and it'll stay in there once you can stain it with these little pencils. Like I've got these pencils that to bring it back to the rosewood color or whatever, so you don't see them in there anyhow. But it's good to get that done. Now, the one thing I will mention, when you do have your strings off your guitar and you're changing them, especially with a brand new instrument for you, but 40 years old for everybody else. Most of them have not had much done on the fret, and the fret is the most abused part of a guitar, and it has to be treated properly. And in order to do that, you have to clean it off and give it a good coat of the lemon oil. And don't use anything but guitar lemon oil, because a lot of the furniture lemon oils have other substances in there that are not that good for your guitar. So clean it out with some sort of cleaner that you can get completely off again, and then put the lemon oil on. And when you're finished, you may have a few loose frets, like this one was loose on mine a little bit. So all I did, and it's a very slight tap, you just hold the tongue depressor over the fret and take a pair of pliers or whatever, just give it a slight tap. And when I did that on the first fret, I found there's a little bit of, even green stuff coming out from years of playing and stuff like that. But at least it pushed the fret down far enough that it was quite usable after that. Now, one thing good to have for a guitar is a mirror to look inside the guitar, and a strong light. This one I won't turn on in the camera, it'll blind everything. But by doing this, you can see, what sort of issues you have inside the guitar from years of aging and abuse and everything else. And this one has no cracks, no separation from the bracing, and that's one of the things I liked when I bought the guitar. So you might want to get yourself a little bicycle mirror and a strong light, and just have a peek inside. Now, one thing I did find with the guitar is the person that owned it before was a real strummer, and there were a lot of strum marks here, just above the pick guard, and just in here, and also right in here, okay, and here. I don't know, he must have really had some good campfire things with this guitar, but it stood the test of time, and it seems to have a beautiful tone to it. So I'm not an expert in that, but all I know is that the one thing you want to do is you want to make sure it's going to last another 30 years. So the one thing that's good to do is make sure you're always going to get cracks on the finish down here. Now, the best way to finish cracks on the guitar is with, it's called cabinet furniture refinishing. It's a water-based product, and it doesn't harm the guitar because it's a very thin light coating. And basically what you do is you get your thinnest paintbrush you can find, and you wet it with the finish, and then you just go along the edge of the crack, of the finishing crack, with that, and it won't change the appearance of the guitar at all. It'll still look like it has a crack, but it will bind it so that it won't go any further, the finishing crack. And if you get any on the top surface while it's sucking it into the crack, then you just wipe it with a microfiber cloth. This product is meant to be used with a microfiber cloth. This is not one I use for putting on this finish, but I just have one for demo purposes. With this particular guitar, to take some of the pick scratches off of this outside edge here and here without ruining any of the acoustics, you basically take this and pour some on the cloth, and then you very lightly wipe it along the pick marks on both sides, and then you leave it for about I would say it usually dries in less than 5 minutes. And then once it's dry, you kind of feather overlap it another coat, and you keep doing that, and eventually the light pick marks will disappear, and you won't have ruined anything as far as the sounding of the guitar is concerned. Sometimes there's a little bit up here too, and around the edges sometimes you'll find a few scratches. It helps to kind of preserve and keep it from. In this particular case, right along here, there was a bit of a mark. I don't know exactly how. But it was a wear mark, and by doing that about 4 times just right along the edge, it disappeared. It literally you wouldn't even know it was there, and it won't affect the acoustics. What affects the acoustics is if you start doing too much in this area of the guitar, because this is the part that gives off the sound properly. This guitar has very light bracing, and that's probably what gives it the nice sound. One of the things that I did with this guitar after and also I'll mention in the sound hole where it was scraped from all the pick marks, I just had a little bit of golden oak finish and some a red or stain finish, and just kind of lightly tapped it, and then used some of that furniture finish to protect it, and it makes a big difference in the way the guitar looks and is preserved. Now, the one thing that I've experienced with other guitars, I'll show you another one that I picked up. This is a Yamaha guitar, beautiful rosewood and beautiful front, solid spruce. Really nice guitar that hasn't been used all that much, but of course somebody had decided to put a pickup in it, a guitar pickup, and it's a bridge. It goes in the bridge itself. It's a piezoelectric type of pickup, but this kind of ruins the look of the guitar, and I don't know, it might affect the sound a bit, but it doesn't do anything for the a vintage guitar. It still has nice sound, but it's just you want to try and preserve it as much as possible. In this guitar, I actually put a pickup in it, which actually brings out its most beautiful sound, and we won't mention any manufacturers, but it was let's see, I have a piezoelectric. I tested it out with these piezoelectric that's what I tested it out with before I decided to buy them and put them on, and of course when you're buying, you want a good quality set to put in there so that it brings out the real sound. Now, I'll just quickly show you how these go in. First of all, you have a hole you have to drill in the back of the where the strap goes, and they always say, "Oh yeah, drill a 1/2 inch," but if you'll see on the gauge there, if you drilled a 1/2 inch, and I don't know, it would be too much, and you'd have a loose thing, and then you'd have to somehow fill it in. So make sure you measure the size of this, and then have a nice set of drills which are right down to, let's see, these ones are down to 30/2 of an inch, and get as close a drill as you possibly can to drill that hole. But make sure you start that hole in the back with one of these guys here. Now, what I discovered is I only go up to the second last notch before I start drilling with the regular drill, because if I went up to the last notch, that would be 1/2 inch, which would be too much. But these things do a nice job of drilling in the guitar without any chipping. And of course you still use your masking tape. You don't want to do the job without the masking tape. The biggest thing with those type of pickups is measuring how to get them in your guitar in the right place. It's a fairly easy job. There's my template that I made, and basically what I did is I had a piece of cardboard like this and just cut out a section of it approximately this size, and in this particular guitar they have two screw holes that come, or two bolts that come through right here. So of course the first thing you do when you reach inside the guitar is you put it up against the two inside braces, and then you push it up against the two bolts until you get a mark of where those two bolts are. You take it out, you poke 2 holes in it, and then you put it inside the guitar again. You slide it over the bolts, and then you take golf club tees, and you slide them through your first and your last peg holes, and make a mark in your just trying to get this right here, make a mark in your cardboard where they are, and then you take it out and you make a full mark. You push it all the way through. So then you have your perfect guide, and then you have to take a, well, in the case of the 50 millimeter transducers, I used a 5/8 inch drill. Once I marked, first of all you have to mark the where the bridge is, and the black line is where the bridge is on my guitar, and that's a fairly easy task once you sit it on top of the guitar. I'll just show you what I mean. You sit it on top of the guitar, and you poke your 2 T's in the first and last peg holes, and then you can see your bridge on either side. You draw your black line, and that's your bridge. And they're basically, each one of these transducers is spaced in between 2 strings, as you'll see in their directions. And you so once you get the spacing, then you take your 5/8 inch drill, put it at each mark you made, and rotate it to make a scratch, and that marks where your transducer goes. Then you use your clear, this is the only tape you can use, it's you can see it's clear mounting tape, it's called. And by putting the mounting tape on the front, you stick your transducers to that mounting tape, and and that holds them there while you position in the guitar. And then when you're ready to go, you put the crazy glue gel on all 3 transducers, and then you stick it in your guitar, and of course there's 3 holes here where you've stuck your stuck this guy through, and that's where you put your 3 fingers on those holes, and that holds all 3 transducers in place while the glue is drying for, I don't know, I think I held it for 3 minutes just to make sure. But that's about it for mounting the transducer. And then once the transducers are mounted, then you slide in your this piece here and bolt it on. So it's not a difficult job, really. The main thing is having the right materials to do it. And I'm just going to play you a little passage here of what these guys sound like. This guy sounds like after it's all ready to go here. Okay, we have I'll take the glass off. You can't read with them on. Now, I don't know whether you've played with picks or not, but everybody has their own preference. Mine is that the 3 picks go like that. You notice that this pick here is slightly that way, or well, pointing the wrong way. And this pick here is too far that way, so I'll bring it back. And of course this one's like this. And you always file down the thumb pick. You never leave it at the thickness that you buy it at. It just doesn't have the right sound. Everybody has their own preference of how much you file it down. But where that black is approximately where you file it. That's where I play the guitar the most, and that's where you notice after playing a guitar, these are new picks, so they don't have the finger picks. These 2 don't ever get filed down. They're always the right thickness, and it basically has to do with the angle that you pick at to get the right sound. I'll put the guitar up here so you can see. Angie, where will those clouds all disappear? Angie, where will it lead us all from here? With no loving in our soul and no money in our coat. You can't say we're satisfied, Angie, Angie. You can't say we never tried. You're so beautiful, but ain't it time we said goodbye? Angie, I still love you. remember those times we cried. All those dreams we held so close seem to all go up in the smoke. Let me whisper in your ear, Angie, Angie, where will it lead us all from here? Oh, Angie, don't you weep, all your kisses still taste sweet. I hate that sadness in your eyes, but Angie, Angie, ain't it time we said goodbye, with no loving in our souls and no money in our coats? You can say we're satisfied, but Angie, I still love you, baby. Everywhere I look, I see your eyes. There ain't no woman who comes close to you. Come on, baby, cry your eyes. But Angie, Angie, ain't it good to be alive? Angie, Angie, they can say we never tried. Now I know that's not Keith Richards by any means, and it's not like his beautiful Gibson guitars, but you know what? It's all you need for rock and roll, and I hope you find a good guitar for yourself and you have as much success and this one's going off to Luther very soon, and thanks for having me.